What is going on, everybody? Welcome on into Press Coverage, where we help you gain an edge in fantasy football. I'm your host, as always, Wyatt Bertolo, running solo tonight to talk about some Week 9 storylines to help you all get ready for this week and beyond. We're going to get right into it. Our first player of the day is Troy Franklin. Troy Franklin, really interesting player coming into this season. His rookie season, not that inspiring. The NFL draft process for him, not that inspiring. Kind of fell in the NFL draft further than we thought he would coming into the process. Falls to the 4th round, but gets drafted by the Broncos with his college quarterback. So there gave, a little bit of inspiration there for maybe something down the line could happen for him. Rookie year goes by, not that impressive. Coming into this season, question was, is he going to actually earn more playing time? I would say that based on the drumbeat in the offseason, there was a little bit of hope that he would. Preseason didn't really show much, but Sean Payton tends to have some weird preseason usage that doesn't really tell you all that much. But so far this season, he really has kind of solidified himself as that number 2 wide receiver for the Broncos. He's playing most of the snaps. He's running most of the routes. The way the Broncos offense tends to go is that Courtland Sutton's a full-time wide receiver, leads them, and then everyone else tends to rotate. But Franklin has been the one guy who's kind of solidified a role next to Sutton. He's second on team targets. It's just that these targets are a little bit boom bust for him. They're not too consistent. Week 8, though, we got a really, really good performance from him. Big game, 2 touchdowns. Love to see it. So far on the season now, 12 PPR points per game, which is okay. Solid, numbers for him. Someone you can actually play. But the problem is that variance, like I was saying. 2 games over 24 PPR points, 4 games under 9 PPR points per game. But there are some inspiring numbers for him. Look, when we're looking at these advanced stats, 10 red zone targets for him. That's 4th among wide receivers. He has 11 design targets. That's 2nd among wide receivers. So we know that the Broncos are drawing stuff up for him, and especially in the red zone, which we love to see because touchdowns help drive fantasy points, obviously. So he is somebody who you can put in your lineup and have some hope that he's actually going to help you out. It's just that boom bust nature of his profile right now moving forward. He really is more of a flex player, a desperation wide receiver 3 if you have to. Depending on the matchup, that's where you really want to have confidence in Troy Franklin. Obviously, against the Cowboys, this was a great matchup, somewhere where there's going to be a lot of points. And if you want access to some of those points from the Broncos, Troy Franklin is a way to do it, and you can have some confidence in it. When it's a little bit tougher matchup, it's going to be a lot harder to pin down how that fantasy day is going to go for him. But like I said, boom bust flex player moving forward. I feel confident in saying that I'd like having him on my benches if I can. If anything happened to Courtland Sutton, we might be able to see a little bit more from him. But if I'm being honest, if something happened to Courtland Sutton, I would think that there would just be more of a rotation. I don't think his role would necessarily grow in this Broncos offense. The next player we're going to get to is Saquon Barkley. Is Saquon Barkley back? A lot are saying. So before Week 8, just 13.5 PPR points per game, which is 18th among running backs. Saquon Barkley was having a disappointing year so far this season. The Eagles were kind of having a disappointing year this season. The offensive line has not been at the level that it has been in the past, which means Saquon Barkley doesn't have these holes to hit like he could in the past, where once he gets to the second level and he can dominate defensive backs and linebackers, and he's so hard to tackle and break off these explosive runs, he hasn't really been able to do that this year. Saquon Barkley's always been more of a boom-bust runner who will take some chances trying to make the big play happen. And when the offensive line is not doing him any favors, he's more likely to get stuffed on his runs than he would be otherwise, which has caused him to be a little bit lacking this season and not really hitting these big plays. He's still getting a good opportunity share, but the fantasy points have not been coming for him. But in Week 8, that all changed. 14 carries, 150 yards, and a touchdown. Second play of the game hits a very long touchdown where the offensive line blocked very well. And what do you know? Saquon Barkley is able to hit that second level and take it to the house. He also got 5 targets, which is great to see. Caught 4 of them, 24 yards, another touchdown, 33.4 points per PPR points that game. So Saquon Barkley, now, what's he look like rest of the season? Well, from my eye, Saquon Barkley still looks like the same player he was last year. He's 5th innovative tackle among running backs. I think that's a good way to just see and look at, okay, my eyes telling me one thing, that he looks explosive when he has the opportunity. Here's the stats to back that up. 5th innovative tackles. It shows that he still can shake defenders, which I think is one of the big ways we can tell if a running back is starting to really lose it. Are they still able to break tackles and get extra yards? Saquon Barkley, yes, he can still do that. He still looks, just watching him, he passes the eye test. It's just a matter of this Philadelphia offense. They've had struggles. Are they a passing team? Are they a running team? Finding explosives in the offense, finding consistency in the offense. This was a really good game for them to get back on track. You hope that the offensive line is continuing to get healthier and starting to get back on track to where they were in 2024. If they are, Saquon Barkley can be a massive fantasy scorer for us rest of season. Obviously, he is still one of the best running backs in the NFL on what is still a top offense in the NFL. And we know that they can be one of the absolute best offenses in the NFL. I think that we're going to be getting more of those RB1 numbers moving forward, because that's not where Saquon was, obviously, to start the season. I think we can safely say he is an RB1 rest of the season. I think he was kind of always there, despite him not quite scoring like that, because we know who Saquon Barkley is. We know this Philadelphia offense. We know what they're capable of. It was starting to get a little bit, I don't know if I want to keep him there anymore based on the results that we were getting, but this was a nice result to help us get back on track for Saquon Barkley. There's a realistic possibility he gets back to being like a top 5 running back rest of the season. Like, that would not be surprising if that happens, because this is Saquon, this is the Eagles. But RB1 rest of the season, pretty easy to say. Where among those RB1 ranks is exactly, we could have a conversation about that, and I'm sure people are going to go a little bit back and forth on exactly where. But, for me, it's probably somewhere around RB9. I'm still having players like James Cook, Josh Jacobs, Jahmyr Gibbs ahead of him. But I'm keeping players like Javonte Williams, Kyron Williams, those kinds of names behind him. So somewhere low-end RB1 for me rest of the season is where he is. But do understand that hitting that top 5 ceiling rest of the season is still a possibility. We could be very soon talking about him being with the likes of Jonathan Taylor, Christian McCaffrey, Bijan Robinson rest of the season. Like, that would not be crazy if that happens. All right, everybody, we're going to take a quick moment to hear about the player profile rankings. And when we come back, I'm going to be talking about Tua Tagovailoa.
People say, oh, there's so much free on Player Profiler. What's in the premium package? Well, it starts with the player rankings. We have the best process for ranking and projecting players, not just seasonal leagues, though. We're talking about tight end premium, specifically FFPC, best ball, specifically underdog, including their superflex rankings. And then we have IDP rankings, dynasty rankings, rookie rankings, Scott Fishbowl rankings, offensive line rankings by Dan Fornick, cornerback rankings throughout the season where you can see who's matched up with who. It's incredible. And think about who's contributed to our processes over time. Math majors, analytics powerhouses, plus you get the contributions from the real football guys. Billy Muzio, Dan Williamson, Bradley Stalder. That's why our rankings are the best. And if you want to upgrade and go all in, use promo code Underworld or your host promo code, and you get $25 off.
Back here on Press Coverage, make sure you've liked, subscribed, all those things. If you're looking for some more content to help you get ready for the following week and beyond, please check out my usage report that drops every Monday on playerprofiler.com, where I look at the top 10 usage trends that are going on in the NFL with a focus on the latest week. But now we've got to talk about Tua Tagovailoa, who had a great game this week. No shade to Tagovailoa. His season so far has been pretty rough, but in week 8, he really had a great game. Scored 24.2 fantasy points. He was 20 of 26, 205 yards, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. You love to see it. Before this, just 12.9 points per game, which was 33rd among QBs. So if you don't know, only 32 starting quarterbacks in the NFL. Tua was 33rd among them in points per game. But this was a great day for him against, a defense that you don't expect them to just run over, right? But Tua, I would say, is still kind of the player he's always been. So we kind of have to reckon with what the start of the season's been about. Why was he able to bounce back this week? He's still first among QBs in danger plays, speaking to him putting the ball in danger, throwing passes he should not. Sometimes that's because his arm strength is just not good enough to get the ball there and ends up being a danger play. You look at across his advanced metrics on playerprofiler.com, and he's still kind of, middle of the road when it comes to different accuracy metrics and, different areas of the field. He's 18th in true completion percentage. It really is just about what the Miami offense is doing, what Mike McDaniel has been able to draw up for him to get him going. The big thing for him in week 8 was Miami started to use a 6th offensive lineman a lot to help with protection. And it also helped them get the run game going, where once they're able to get the run game going, now the defense isn't able to just crash down on those quick passes as easily. They have to be careful against the run. It just stresses the defense in more ways than one, something that Miami offense has struggled to do this year. This wrinkle might be able to help them get back on track, which would be great for the weapons in the offense, because you're probably still not really starting Tua moving forward. I would not be starting Tua unless I'm desperate in a superflex league. But we are starting Jalen Waddle. We're starting Devin Achane. If Darren Waller comes back, we might be starting Darren Waller again. So hopefully this little wrinkle for the Dolphins from week 8 continues and they're able to get back on track. Tua is able to get back on track a little bit, just enough to at least feed our weapons so we can have plenty of confidence using them. Now, Devon Achane, he's been fine because all of his opportunities are mostly, manufactured passes in the receiving game, which Tua has no trouble really completing those, and his rushing attempts, which have been, pretty boom bust there as well. A lot of variability to how well of a rushing day he's able to have week to week. Kind of depends on if he's able to hit a long one, because it's tough for that Miami offense to really get consistent runs and consistent chunk gains. But he's been fine fantasy wise. Jalen Waddle, a little bit up and down because Tua has been so up and down and mostly down. So hopefully this gets Tua back on track enough where we can feel a lot of confidence in those weapons moving forward. Like I said before, I'm not starting Tua in seasonal leagues. In 1QBs, he's not even close to being on my radar. In Superflex leagues, if you have to, you can, but you're not really expecting much. A 15-point day from Tua right now would be great. If we got that weekly, that would be an improvement from where he was entering week 8. So the bar is low for Tua. If you have to start him in Superflex, it's okay. There you can actually do worse than Tua. There are worse options in fantasy right now, but I'm definitely looking to go in other directions if I can. Just hoping for him to keep it up for our weapons. 4th player of the day is Jaylin Noel. He's had a couple nice weeks in a row for the Texans. In week 7, 7 targets, 4 catches, 77 yards. That's 11.7 PPR points. In week 8, 6 targets, 5 catches, 63 yards, 11.3 PPR points. So he's kind of become a real part of this offense. Now, it is with Nico Collins and Christian Kirk both being injured right now. But the one that we really have to worry about is Christian Kirk, because they're really playing for the same snaps in the slot. Now, what's been weird since Christian Kirk has been out is that Noel has been rotating with Braxton Berrios, which I cannot understand. Noel looks fine out there. Looks like he knows the playbook. He's performing well. He's the young player. He's a day 2 NFL draft pick. I don't understand why he'd be splitting snaps with Braxton Berrios in the slot, but that's what's happening. Luckily, Jaylin Noel has still been able to produce on his opportunities and on those lower snaps, despite Braxton Berrios. So we're getting there anyways, but there's plenty of room for growth here for Jaylin Noel. This is a talented player. A player I really liked coming into the NFL. I actually wrote about him a couple times on a couple articles for PlayerProfiler.com as this player that a rookie I really liked. He's highly athletic. Watching him play, to me, he looks like unbridled athleticism. He could actually use a little bit of refinement in his routes because he is so much of like a jitterbug in his routes that they're almost over-exaggerated, which can actually slow down his routes slightly despite his immense athleticism. But as he continues to tighten that up, he could be a very, very good route runner in the NFL. It's also great that he's more of a vertical slot wide receiver. He's had a big post catch this week for a 44-yard gain. He does things not the average slot can do in an offense. And honestly, he's kind of doing a little bit of what Tank Dell was doing for the Texans, which I think they've been missing as this explosive player who can work downfield and work short intermediate at the same time if they need it. Now, they were doing it from different ways a little bit because Tank Dell actually played on the outside despite his size, and Jaylin Noel is playing from the slot right now. But they did a similar thing for the offense, which is why I think Jaylin Noel is going to continue to be a producer for the Texans and continue to have a role for them, because I think they kind of need that in the offense right now. Him versus Jaden Higgins, both both day 2 rookies for the Texans. I have a lot more faith in Jaylin Noel rest of the season than I do Jaden Higgins, because Jaden Higgins seems to be a Nico Collins direct backup in the offense. When Nico Collins has been out, Jaden Higgins has played and gotten opportunities. When Nico Collins is healthy, Jaden Higgins has done next to nothing. And we know that Nico Collins isn't going anywhere when he's healthy. He's a top wide receiver in the NFL. Jaden Higgins is not passing him. On the other hand, Jaylin Noel could reasonably pass Christian Kirk even when Christian Kirk is healthy. Christian Kirk is not much at this point in his career. He's not that big of a bar to cross for a rookie, especially one who's already producing and looking fairly good on the opportunities that they're getting. So Jaylin Noel, I think, is one, a great bench stash, and two, could potentially be a flex player for us moving forward. As long as Christian Kirk is out, I would feel comfortable flexing Jaylin Noel in PPR leagues. And I think it's important to know that the ceiling can go up from here. If Jaylin Noel producing like a wide receiver 3 rest of the season should not be much of a surprise to anybody, because he's a good, talented rookie on an offense that could use another target earner, another player who can really step up in the passing game. Because right now it's basically just Nico Collins and that's it. No one else is really jumping off the page in the passing game. Dalton Schultz is Dalton Schultz. He's a fine tight end, but he's not really doing anything exciting. Jaden Higgins I think, can be a talented player as well. But again, he's kind of blocked by Nico Collins. So there's room to be had in this offense. I think Jaylin Noel is a talented player who can grab that opportunity moving forward. Great bench stash and possibility for more moving forward rest of the season. The last player I'm going to talk about today is Chimere Dike. I hope I'm saying that right. I've heard it a few different ways. I'm going with Chimere, but for the most part, I'm going to call him Dike, with this little mini breakout that he's had over the last couple of weeks as well. In week 7, 4 targets, 4 catches, 70 yards, and a touchdown for 17 PPR points. In week 8, he goes up in volume to 8 targets, 7 catches, 93 yards, 16.3 PPR points. These are great numbers for a player that, frankly, no one was really excited about. When Chimere Dike was drafted before Alekai by the Titans, that was a surprise. People were not expecting that. Aomanor was expected to be a day 2 pick originally. Chimere Dike somewhere on day 3. We don't know where. They both get drafted the same round, but Dike is drafted first. That was a surprise. Not many people were expecting that. But Dike is a good player with the ball in his hands. That's kind of what he does. He's a slot player where you just want to get the ball in his hands and let him do work after the catch. But he has also shown some downfield ability. The touchdown he had in week 7 was a deep over route. So we know that that's a possibility in the offense for him. Worth noting, obviously, this is happening with Calvin Ridley out, but, I honestly don't care at this point, because I think Calvin Ridley's mostly done. He's mostly done with the Titans for sure, and he might be just mostly done as an NFL wide receiver at this point, because when we've seen him this year, it has not looked good. And obviously, this is a Titans team that's thinking about the future, thinking about who's going to be part of the future of this team. Calvin Ridley is not that. The future of this team and the future of this wide receiver core right now is Dike and Aomanor. Aomanor had a little bit more to do early on in the season when Ridley was healthy, but with Ridley out, Dike has now stepped up in his place and is actually producing. I think as long as Ridley is out, and even once Ridley gets back, Dike is kind of a boom bust wide receiver 3 moving forward. Debatably not even boom bust, because if he's going to continue to get 8 targets a game with a role that enables him to have easier catches and run after the catch, like, he can just consistently get there for us. Now, Cam Ward and the Titans offense in general has not looked good. Straight up. They look bad. Cam Ward has looked awful. There are times when you see why he was a number 1 overall pick. His arm is crazy good. He just makes throws on the NFL field that some quarterbacks cannot make. The way he's able to force it into an area of the field with barely even moving his body, more or less just a flick of the wrist, is really impressive. But he's really inconsistent down to down. Makes mistakes routinely. So he has a lot to clean up to get this offense on track. But if it does get on track, if that ever comes along, he's probably going to be bringing along a pass catcher with him. There's a decent chance it's Chimere Dike. Now, I'm going to take this time to also shout out Aomanor, who was a prospect I liked coming into the NFL. I think he has a chance to be something too. We saw glimpses of it earlier in the season. Like I said, him and Dike are the future of this offense, the future of the wide receiver core for the time being. They're the future that's actually on the roster right now. So I would expect them to be the featured part of the passing offense. But I do prefer DK for the time being because I think he's getting the easier looks in the offense. I think his production will be more consistent in the Aomanor, who Aomanor is going to be a little bit more consistent. He's working a little bit more downfield. He's doing a little bit more of the harder routes, harder things to do as a wide receiver, a little bit harder routes to get targeted on and complete. Whereas DK is doing the easier stuff. DK is getting some of that downfield work, like I mentioned, the touchdown in week 7, but it's not happening as much as Aomanor. So I think his production can be a little bit more consistent, and a player who I want to have on my rosters, honestly, because these last 2 weeks are, I think, possibly real, at least real enough that I think can continue to happen in this offense. Real as in, is DK someone we're going to be excited to draft in 2026? I don't know. Is DK excited about DK and consistent enough in this offense that we think he can be a contributor in 3 wide receiver leagues rest of the season? Yes, I think that's a possibility. But that's going to do it for this episode of Press Coverage. I appreciate all of you out there. If you haven't liked and subscribed yet, please do so. It would mean the world to us and helps us continue to grow. Do all those things. Follow me on Twitter at WyattB_FF. If you're not on Fast Draft yet, make sure you sign up with code Wyatt to get that deposit bonus. Get in those DFS streets with me. There's some great tournaments happening over there. If you haven't played on Fast Draft yet, I really highly recommend it. The DFS games are unlike other sites. They're really cool. Check them out. Appreciate all of you. I'll see you next time.
Hey, I want to thank you for being part of this broadcast. If you have any thoughts on it, leave a comment. If you enjoyed it, make sure you leave a like. And if you want to see more shows on the Player Profiler channel, subscribe to it. That's how we know you want more.